The gunshot echoed through the valley like a crack of thunder, startling Abigail Fletcher from her restless sleep. She sat bolt upright in the small stagecoach, her heart hammering against her ribs as the vehicle lurched to an abrupt halt. Colorado Territory, 1875, was proving to be as wild and unpredictable as the letters from her late father had warned. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm," the driver shouted from above, his voice tinged with panic. "We're being robbed." Abigail clutched her worn leather satchel to her chest, feeling the precious few dollars she had left pressing against her through the fabric of her traveling dress. 6 weeks on the road, all her worldly possessions reduced to what she could carry, and now this. A man with a bandana covering his face appeared at the window, waving a pistol. "Out! Everyone out now!" The other passengers, an elderly couple and a traveling salesman, complied immediately, stumbling into the harsh sunlight of the Colorado afternoon. Abigail followed, her legs stiff from the long journey. The dust of the road clung to her skirts as she assessed their situation. 3 masked men on horseback surrounded the stagecoach, their guns trained on the frightened passengers. The leader, a tall man with cold eyes visible above his mask, dismounted and began collecting valuables. "Watch, jewelry, money, all of it," he demanded, moving down the line of terrified travelers. When he reached Abigail, she reluctantly handed over her satchel, tears welling in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "that's everything I have." The robber sneered as he rifled through her meager possessions. "Not much to show for yourself, are you, miss?" A rifle shot cracked through the air, and one of the bandits fell from his horse with a cry of pain. The leader whirled around, searching for the source of the attack. "Drop your weapons, or the next one goes between your eyes." A deep voice commanded from the ridge above the road. Abigail looked up to see a lone rider silhouetted against the sky, rifle aimed steadily at the robbers. He was tall in the saddle, shoulders broad beneath a worn leather vest, the brim of his hat pulled low over his eyes. The leader of the bandits cursed, raised his gun toward the newcomer, and was rewarded with another shot that knocked the weapon from his hand. "I won't say it again," the rider called, already reloading with practiced efficiency. The remaining bandits exchanged glances, then threw down their weapons. The lone rider descended from the ridge, keeping his rifle trained on the men as he approached. Now Abigail could see him clearly, a man perhaps 30 years of age, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. A thin scar ran along his jawline, disappearing into several days' worth of stubble. "Tie them up," he instructed the stagecoach driver, who hurried to comply. "There's a marshal's office in Silverton. You can deliver them there." As the driver bound the would-be robbers, the stranger dismounted and began returning the stolen items to their rightful owners. When he reached Abigail, their eyes met, and something flickered in his expression. "I believe this belongs to you, madam," he said, holding out her satchel. "Thank you," she replied, taking it with trembling hands. "You saved us all." He nodded once, the gesture curt but not unkind. "Name's Cole Blackwood. Where are you headed?" "Pine Valley," she replied. "I'm to take a position as the new schoolteacher." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Pine Valley's my hometown. Been away tracking these outlaws for near 2 weeks." He glanced at the bound men. "Guess I found them." The stagecoach driver approached, hat in hand. "Mr. Blackwood, we're mighty grateful for your help. We can make it to Silverton before nightfall if we leave now." Cole nodded. "I'll ride alongside until you're safely there." As the passengers reboarded, Abigail paused beside Cole. "Thank you again, Mr. Blackwood." He tipped his hat, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Just doing what needed to be done, miss." "Fletcher, Abigail Fletcher." Something in his eyes changed then, a recognition that puzzled her. "Fletcher," he repeated. "Any relation to James Fletcher?" Abigail's heart clenched. "My father, he passed away 3 months ago." Cole's expression softened with genuine regret. "I'm sorry to hear that. Your father was a good man. We all thought highly of him in Pine Valley." The driver called for the passengers to board, and Abigail reluctantly climbed back into the stagecoach, her mind racing with questions. Her father had never mentioned a Cole Blackwood in his letters. True to his word, Cole rode alongside the stagecoach all the way to Silverton, where the bandits were handed over to the local marshal. As night fell, the passengers found rooms at the town's only hotel. Abigail was unpinning her hair in her small room when a knock came at the door. She opened it cautiously to find Cole standing in the hallway, hat in hand. "Miss Fletcher, I was hoping we might speak," he said, his voice low. "About Pine Valley. There are things you should know before you arrive." She hesitated, aware of the impropriety of inviting a man into her room, but equally aware that she knew nothing of her future home except what her father's occasional letters had revealed. "We can speak in the hotel parlor," she suggested. "It's still early enough to be proper." The parlor was empty save for an elderly man dozing by the fireplace. Cole and Abigail sat in high back chairs in the corner, far enough from the sleeping man to ensure privacy. "Your father wrote to you about Pine Valley?" Cole asked. Abigail nodded. "He moved there 5 years ago after my mother died. He said it was a place where he could start fresh. His letters spoke of building a life there, of helping establish the town." She studied Cole's face. "But he never mentioned you." Cole's expression remained unreadable. "James and I had our differences, especially toward the end, but I respected him. When he suggested bringing a teacher to Pine Valley, I supported the idea. He wrote that the town had grown enough to need a proper school," Abigail said. "That's why I came. I was teaching in Boston, but after he died." She trailed off, unwilling to share the depth of her grief with this stranger. "Pine Valley isn't Boston," Cole said bluntly. "It's still rough around the edges. We've got mining operations in the mountains, ranches in the valley, and plenty of folk just passing through, some good people, some not so good. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. Blackwood. Never said you were, but teaching won't be your only challenge." He leaned forward. "Your father had enemies in Pine Valley, people who felt cheated by his mining ventures." Abigail stiffened. "My father was an honest man." "I believe he was," Cole said, "but others didn't see it that way. When word gets out that James Fletcher's daughter is the new schoolteacher, you might face some hostility." "Why are you telling me this?" Cole's eyes held her steadily. "Because I promised your father I'd look out for you if anything happened to him." Abigail blinked in surprise. "He made you promise that?" "Last winter, when he fell ill the first time, he recovered, but it scared him enough to make preparations." Cole's voice softened. "He loved you very much. Miss Fletcher spoke of you often." Tears threatened, and Abigail looked away. "Thank you for telling me." "We leave for Pine Valley at first light," Cole said, standing. "Rest well, Miss Fletcher. It's a full day's ride ahead." The journey to Pine Valley took them through some of the most beautiful country Abigail had ever seen. Towering mountains stood sentinel over vast meadows blooming with wildflowers. Streams cut through the landscape like silver ribbons, and the air was crisp and clean in a way Boston's never was. Cole rode beside the stagecoach, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of local history. By midday, Abigail found herself watching him more often than the scenery, intrigued by this quiet man who seemed to command respect from everyone they encountered on the trail. As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, they crested a hill, and Pine Valley spread out before them, a collection of wooden buildings nestled in a verdant valley, smoke rising from chimneys, the spire of a small church visible against the backdrop of pine-covered hills. "It's beautiful," Abigail breathed. Cole nodded. "Your father thought so too." The stagecoach rolled into town, drawing curious glances from the townspeople. Abigail felt a flutter of nervousness as they pulled up in front of the general store where a small crowd had gathered. Cole dismounted and helped her down from the coach. "Folks," he announced, "this is Miss Abigail Fletcher, our new schoolteacher." A tall woman with silver-streaked hair stepped forward, extending her hand. "Clara Thompson, Miss Fletcher. I run the boarding house where you'll be staying." "We're mighty pleased to have you." Others introduced themselves: the blacksmith, the storekeeper, and his wife, a few ranchers who happened to be in town. They seemed genuinely welcoming, though Abigail caught a few whispers at the mention of her last name. "I'll bring your trunk to the boarding house," Cole said. "Mrs. Thompson can get you settled in." Before Abigail could thank him, a commotion at the end of the street caught everyone's attention. A group of men emerged from the saloon, led by a burly figure with a thick beard and a permanent scowl. "Blackwood," the man called, "heard you were back, and what's this about Fletcher's daughter?" Cole's posture changed subtly, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. "Evening, Harlan. This is Miss Fletcher, our new teacher." Harlan spat on the ground, his eyes never leaving Abigail's face. "Fletcher's blood, ain't that something?" He turned to the gathered townspeople. "Y'all just gonna welcome her like her daddy didn't swindle half the town?" "That's enough, Harlan," Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Or what, Blackwood? You gonna shoot me like you did my brother?" Harlan's hand hovered near his holstered gun. Abigail felt the color drain from her face. What had her father gotten involved in? "Your brother drew on me first," Cole replied evenly. "And we both know why." Harlan's face contorted with rage. "You and Fletcher thick as thieves." "Well, one's dead and the other is the law in this town," finished a new voice. A man wearing a marshal's badge stepped between the two groups. "Break it up, Harlan. Go sleep it off." For a tense moment, Abigail thought Harlan might defy the marshal, but finally he turned away with a muttered curse, his companions following. The marshal turned to Abigail with an apologetic smile. "Walter Brady, Miss Fletcher, sorry about that welcome. Harlan Miller has a grudge against half the town, not just your father." "Thank you, Marshal," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Let's get you settled," Mrs. Thompson said, taking Abigail's arm. "You must be exhausted from your journey." As they walked toward the boarding house, Abigail glanced back to see Cole and Marshal Brady deep in conversation, both men looking grave. The boarding house was clean and comfortable, if simple. Mrs. Thompson showed Abigail to a small room on the second floor with a window overlooking the main street. "Baths down the hall if you want to wash up before supper," the older woman said. "We eat at 6 sharp." Left alone, Abigail sank onto the narrow bed, the events of the day washing over her. Her father had never mentioned any conflicts in his letters. He'd painted Pine Valley as an idyllic community, a place where he'd finally found peace after her mother's death. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Cole standing there, her trunk at his feet. "Thought you might need this," he said. "Thank you." She hesitated, then asked, "What was that about, with that man, Harlan?" Cole sighed. "It's complicated. Your father came to Pine Valley with dreams of striking it rich in the silver mines. He formed a partnership with several local men, including Harlan Miller and his brother Silas. The venture failed and they lost their investments. That hardly seems reason enough for such hostility. It wasn't just about the money. Silas Miller tried to force your father to sign over his claim by threatening him. I intervened. Things escalated." Cole's hand unconsciously moved to the scar on his jawline. "Silas drew his gun. I was faster." Abigail's eyes widened. "You killed him." "It was him or me," Cole said simply. "The marshal ruled it self-defense, but Harlan's never accepted that. He blamed your father as much as me." "My father never mentioned any of this in his letters. He wouldn't have wanted to worry you." Cole's expression softened. "Look, most folks here respected your father. Don't let Harlan Miller color your impression of Pine Valley." Abigail wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly chilled despite the warm evening. "And the schoolteacher position, was that real or just a way to get me here?" "It's real," Cole assured her. "The town's been saving for a proper teacher for over a year. The children need you, Miss Fletcher." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll stay, at least until I've fulfilled my obligation." "Fair enough." Cole tipped his hat. "Rest well. I'll come by tomorrow to show you the schoolhouse." After he left, Abigail unpacked her few belongings, her mind racing. How well had she really known her father, and what other secrets might be waiting for her in Pine Valley? The next morning dawned clear and bright. After a hearty breakfast with the other boarding house residents, 2 elderly sisters, and a young widow with her son Abigail found Cole waiting for her on the porch. "Ready to see your new workplace?" he asked. They walked through town, Cole pointing out various establishments and introducing her to people they met along the way. Despite the incident with Harlan the previous evening, most of the townspeople seemed genuinely pleased to meet her. The general store gets new inventory every other week, Cole explained as they passed the building. Mr. Parker, the owner, orders books if you need anything specific for the school. That's good to know, Abigail replied, making mental notes. How many students should I expect? Around 20, ages 6 to 16. Some can only come when farm work allows, especially the older boys. They reached a small building at the edge of town, freshly painted white with a new sign above the door, Pine Valley School. It's not much, Cole said, unlocking the door, but it's solid. Built it last summer. Inside, the schoolhouse was simple but well constructed, with rows of desks facing a teacher's desk on a raised platform. A pot-bellied stove stood in one corner, and large windows let in ample light. This is wonderful, Abigail said, genuinely impressed. She ran her hand along the smooth surface of the teacher's desk. You did a fine job, Cole looked pleased. Most of the town pitched in. Your father donated the lumber. Abigail examined the bookshelves, which contained a modest collection of texts. I'll need to assess what else we need. When does the term begin? Monday next. We'll spread the word that you've arrived. She nodded, already planning lessons in her mind. Teaching was familiar territory, a comfort amid all the uncertainty. Cole watched her for a moment, then said, There's something else you should see. He led her behind the schoolhouse to where a path wound up a gentle slope. After a short walk, they came to a small cemetery overlooking the valley. I thought you might want to visit your father, Cole said quietly. Abigail's throat tightened as he led her to a simple headstone near the edge of the cemetery. The inscription read, James Fletcher, 1830–1875, a man of vision. She knelt beside the grave, tears welling in her eyes. The reality of her father's death, somewhat abstract while she was still in Boston, hit her fully now. Cole stepped back, giving her privacy. Abigail traced the letters of her father's name, whispering, What happened to you here, father? What didn't you tell me? After a few minutes, she rose and rejoined Cole. Thank you for bringing me here, he nodded. I come by sometimes to talk to him. A faint flush colored his cheeks, as if embarrassed by the admission. Were you close? She asked as they started back down the path. Cole considered the question. Not at first. When James arrived in Pine Valley, we butted heads. He had big plans for developing the mines, and I was focused on ranching. But after the incident with the Miller brothers, something changed. We became friends. Yet he never mentioned you in his letters. Like I said, we had our differences right up to the end. Cole's expression grew distant. The last few months of his life, he became obsessed with one particular mine shaft, said he was close to a big strike. I thought he was chasing fool's gold, wasting what time he had left. Was he ill long? The coughing started last winter. Doc Jenkins said it was the mine dust in his lungs. By spring, he could barely get out of bed some days, but he kept pushing himself. Cole shook his head. Stubborn man, your father. They had reached the schoolhouse again. Abigail paused at the door, looking back at Cole. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Blackwood. I appreciate your honesty about my father. Call me Cole, he said. And I haven't told you everything. Some things your father wanted to tell you himself. He left letters for you. Her heart quickened. Letters? Where are they? At my ranch. I can bring them to town tomorrow, or, he hesitated. Or you could ride out with me this afternoon, see a bit of the countryside. I could have you back before dark. Propriety dictated she refuse such an invitation from a man she barely knew, but the promise of her father's letters, possibly his final words, to her overrode convention. I would like that, she said. If it's not too much trouble, no trouble at all, I'll come for you after lunch. True to his word, Cole appeared at the boarding house at 1 o'clock, riding a handsome bay gelding and leading a gentle-looking mare. Hope you can ride, Miss Fletcher, he said as he helped her mount. Abigail, please, she replied. And yes, I can ride, though it's been some time. They rode out of town, following a well-worn trail that wound through meadows dotted with wildflowers. After the initial awkwardness passed, Abigail found herself enjoying Cole's company. He was knowledgeable about the land, pointing out various plants and their uses, telling stories of the valley's early settlers. My family came here when I was just a boy, he explained. Father was a trapper, then a prospector. Never struck it rich, but he managed to acquire enough land for a decent ranch before he died. And your mother, a shadow crossed his face. She passed when I was 12. Fever took her and my little sister both. I'm sorry, Abigail said softly. I lost my mother 3 years ago. That's partly why Father moved west. Too many memories in Boston. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a soothing backdrop to the stunning scenery. After about an hour, they crested a hill, and Cole's ranch came into view, a sprawling property with a sturdy log house, a large barn, and several outbuildings, all nestled against the backdrop of the mountains. Welcome to Blackwood Ranch, Cole said, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached, a young man emerged from the barn, waving enthusiastically. That's Danny, my ranch hand, Cole explained. Good kid, orphaned in an Indian raid a few years back. I took him in. Danny hurried to take their horses as they dismounted. Good to see you, boss. And you must be Miss Fletcher. Cole's been talking about you coming to town for weeks. Abigail raised an eyebrow at Cole, who suddenly seemed very interested in adjusting his saddle. Has he now? She asked, amused by Cole's discomfort. Sure has. Ever since he got that letter saying you'd accepted the teaching position. Danny grinned, oblivious to Cole's glare. Said it was the best news the town had in ages. That's enough, Danny, Cole said gruffly. See to the horses, will you? The young man led the animals away, still grinning. Forgive him, Cole said. He doesn't always think before he speaks. There's nothing to forgive, Abigail replied, finding Cole's embarrassment rather endearing. It's nice to know someone was looking forward to my arrival. Cole led her into the house, which was surprisingly comfortable inside. The main room had a large stone fireplace, sturdy furniture built with obvious care, and bookshelves filled with volumes that suggested a thoughtful mind behind their selection. Your father's letters are in my study, Cole said, leading her to a small room off the main living area. He opened a drawer in a roll-top desk and withdrew a packet tied with string. He gave these to me about a week before he died, made me promise to deliver them personally if anything happened to him. Abigail took the packet with trembling hands. Thank you for keeping them safe. I'll give you some privacy, Cole said, moving toward the door. Take all the time you need. Alone in the study, Abigail untied the string and found 3 letters, each sealed and numbered. With a deep breath, she opened the first one. My dearest Abigail, her father's familiar handwriting began. If you are reading this, then I have passed from this world without the chance to tell you these things face to face, for which I am profoundly sorry. There is much I have kept from you over the years, some to protect you, some out of my own shame. The letter went on to explain how, after her mother's death, he had fallen into despair and made poor financial decisions that had nearly ruined them. The move west had been as much about escaping creditors as it had been about escaping memories. I came to Pine Valley with little but hope and the last of our family's money, he wrote. I invested in mining operations that promised quick returns, ignoring the warnings of more experienced men, including Cole Blackwood, whose caution I mistook for jealousy. When the venture failed, I was desperate enough to listen to men like Silas Miller, who suggested shortcuts and schemes that crossed lines I had always sworn I would never cross. Abigail read with growing dismay as her father detailed how he had briefly participated in a plot to forge documents related to mining claims before his conscience caught up with him. When I tried to withdraw and alert the authorities, Silas threatened to expose my earlier complicity. He came to my cabin one night, pistol in hand. It was Cole who saved my life, though at great cost to himself. The scar he bears on his face is from that night before he was forced to shoot Silas in self-defense. The second letter continued the story, explaining how Cole had helped him rebuild his reputation in Pine Valley, supporting his legitimate mining efforts and defending him against Harlan Miller's accusations. In Cole Blackwood, I found the son I never had, her father wrote. A man of integrity and courage who saw past my mistakes to the person I was trying to become. He promised to look after you should anything happen to me, a promise I know he will keep with his life if necessary. The third letter was shorter, more urgent in tone, written just days before his death. I believe I have found something significant in the old shaft behind Widow's Peak. Not silver, as everyone assumes, but something far more valuable. I have told no one but Cole, and even he is skeptical. If I am right, your future is secure. If I am wrong, then at least I tried to make amends for my failures as a father. The letter ended with a set of directions to the mine shaft and a rough map. Whatever you find or don't find, know that I have always loved you beyond measure. My greatest regret is not seeing the woman you have become. Be happy, my daughter, and perhaps, if you can find it in your heart, forgive an old fool for his many mistakes. Tears streamed down Abigail's face as she folded the letters carefully. The father she had known upright, principled, cautious seemed at odds with the desperate man who had come west and nearly lost himself. Yet the love in his words was unmistakable, as was his regret. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Cole entered, carrying a tray with tea and biscuits. "Thought you might need something," he said, setting the tray on a small table. His eyes took in her tear-streaked face. "I'm sorry if the letters brought you pain." Abigail wiped her eyes. "Did you know what they contained?" Cole shook his head. "Your father never told me and I didn't ask. I only knew they were important to him." "He wrote about you," she said. "About how you saved his life, about your friendship." She hesitated. "And about a mine shaft, something he found just before he died." Cole's expression grew serious. "Ah, that. You knew about it." He was convinced he'd found something valuable. "Wouldn't tell me exactly what, just that it wasn't silver. I thought it was the illness affecting his mind." Cole poured tea for both of them. "After he died, I checked the shaft, but found nothing unusual. Maybe I didn't know what to look for." Abigail pulled out the map from the third letter. "He left directions. It seems important to him that I find whatever it is." Cole studied the map. "This is accurate enough. It's about 2 hours' ride from here, up in the mountains, rough country." "Will you take me there?" He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "You want to go?" "It was my father's last request. I need to see for myself." Cole considered for a moment. It would have to wait until the weekend. "The trail's too difficult to navigate safely as night approaches." "Saturday, then." "Saturday," he agreed. "I'll come for you early. We'll need the full day." They finished their tea, the conversation turning to lighter topics: the upcoming school term, the history of Pine Valley, books they had both read. Abigail found herself laughing at Cole's dry humor, relaxing in his company in a way she hadn't with anyone since leaving Boston. As the afternoon waned, Cole showed her around the ranch, the vegetable garden he tended himself, the small orchard beginning to bear fruit, the meadows where his cattle grazed. His pride in what he had built was evident in every word, every gesture. "It's a beautiful place," Abigail said sincerely as they walked back toward the house. "You've accomplished much for a man so young." 32 isn't so young," Cole replied with a smile, "but thank you. It's taken years of hard work. No wife to share it with." The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Cole's smile faded slightly. "There was someone once. She decided a rancher's life wasn't for her, left for Denver 5 years ago. I'm sorry, that was presumptuous of me to ask. No harm done, and you, no suitor left behind in Boston." Abigail shook her head. "Teaching doesn't leave much time for courtship, and after Mother died, I was focused on caring for Father, at least until he moved west." They had reached the house. Danny had already saddled their horses for the return journey. "We should head back," Cole said. "I promised to have you home before dark." The ride back to town was quieter, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached Pine Valley, the setting sun cast long shadows across the valley, turning the world golden. Cole escorted Abigail to the boarding house door. "Thank you for today," she said, clutching her father's letters. "For these and for your kindness." "Your father was my friend," Cole replied simply. "I'll see you Saturday, Miss Fletcher." "Abigail," she reminded him, "after today I think we can dispense with formalities." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Abigail, then, good night." The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Abigail spent hours at the schoolhouse, organizing books, planning lessons, and meeting prospective students and their parents. Most were welcoming, though she noticed some still whispered about her father when they thought she couldn't hear. On Friday afternoon, as she was finishing her preparations for the term, the schoolhouse door opened to reveal Harlan Miller. Abigail tensed, remembering their first encounter. "Miss Fletcher," he said, removing his hat. Without the influence of alcohol, he seemed less threatening, though no less imposing. "Mr. Miller," she replied cautiously. "What can I do for you?" He stepped inside, looking uncomfortable. "My daughter Sarah, she's 8. Bright girl, loves stories." He twisted his hat in his hands. "Her mother's gone 3 years now. I've done my best, but understanding dawned. You want her to attend school?" Harlan nodded. "Wasn't sure you'd take her given." He gestured vaguely, encompassing their history. "Mr. Miller, I don't hold children accountable for disputes between adults. Sarah is welcome here, just like any child in Pine Valley." Relief washed over his weathered face. "Thank you, miss. She'll be here Monday." He turned to leave, then paused. "About the other night, I was drunk and angry. It wasn't right taking it out on you." It wasn't quite an apology, but Abigail recognized the effort it took. "A fresh start, Mr. Miller," he nodded once sharply. "A fresh start." He settled his hat back on his head. "But be careful around Blackwood. Man's dangerous when crossed." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her to wonder at the complex web of relationships that defined Pine Valley. Saturday dawned clear and cool. Abigail dressed practically in her sturdiest skirt and boots, packing a small bag with water and food as Cole had instructed. He arrived just after sunrise, leading the same gentle mare she had ridden before. "Ready for an adventure?" he asked, helping her mount. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, settling into the saddle. They rode out of town, following a different trail than before, this one leading up into the mountains. The ascent was gradual at first, winding through pine forests where birds called to each other in the morning light. "Harlan Miller came to see me yesterday," Abigail said as they rode side by side along a wider section of trail. Cole's head snapped toward her. "Did he threaten you?" "No, nothing like that. He came to enroll his daughter in school." She paused. "He also warned me about you." Cole's expression darkened. "Did he now?" "Said you were dangerous when crossed." Abigail studied his profile. "Are you?" "I suppose I am," Cole replied after a moment, "when the cause is just—" They rode in silence for a while, the trail growing steeper, narrower. Cole led the way, occasionally reaching back to help guide Abigail's horse through particularly challenging sections. By midday, they had climbed high enough to see for miles in every direction. Cole called a halt in a small clearing where they dismounted to rest the horses and eat the lunch misses. Thompson had packed for them. "Your father first brought me up here about a year after he arrived in Pine Valley," Cole said as they sat on a fallen log, looking out over the spectacular view. "Said he needed to see the whole valley to understand it properly." "That sounds like him," Abigail smiled. "He always said perspective was important." "Wise man in many ways." Cole took a drink from his canteen, though not always in his choice of business partners. "You mean the Millers?" Cole nodded. "Sela's was cunning, Harlan is bullheaded. Both dangerous in their own ways. Your father was too trusting at first, too desperate later." The letters explained some of it, how you saved his life. Cole shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "He'd have done the same for me. Still, I owe you my gratitude." Abigail touched his arm briefly. "Thank you for being his friend when he needed one most." Cole's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. For a moment, Abigail thought he might say more, but he simply nodded and rose to his feet. "We should keep moving. The mine's still a fair distance, and we'll want to be back before nightfall." The trail grew increasingly difficult as they continued their ascent. In places, it was barely visible, and Cole had to dismount to lead both horses through treacherous sections. Abigail marveled at her father's determination, imagining him making this journey repeatedly, even as his health failed. Finally, in the early afternoon, they reached a narrow plateau high in the mountains. A dark opening in the rock face marked the entrance to the mine shaft, partially concealed by overgrown brush. "This is it," Cole said, securing the horses to a nearby tree. "Widow's Peak Mine, abandoned years ago when the silver ran out." Abigail approached the entrance, a sense of anticipation building within her. What had her father found here that was so important? Cole lit a lantern he had brought and handed it to her. "Stay close. These old shafts can be unstable." The tunnel extended about 50 feet into the mountain, the walls shored up with wooden beams that had seen better days. Cole moved cautiously, testing each step before committing his weight. "Your father's claim was near the back," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. He spent most of his time in a side tunnel about halfway in. Sure enough, they soon came to a fork in the shaft. The main tunnel continued straight ahead while a smaller passage branched off to the right. Cole led the way into the side tunnel, which extended another 30 feet before ending in a rough wall of rock. "This is where he was working," Cole said, holding his lantern higher to illuminate the space. "I checked after he died but found nothing unusual." Abigail examined the area carefully, trying to see it through her father's eyes. Tools lay scattered about: a pick, a shovel, a small hammer. A wooden crate served as a makeshift table, holding a few personal items. A tin cup, a worn notebook, a small framed photograph that Abigail recognized as one of herself as a child. Her throat tightened at this evidence of her father's lonely work, the image of her keeping him company in the darkness. She picked up the notebook, flipping through pages of notes in her father's increasingly shaky handwriting. Most entries documented mundane details: hours worked, sections explored, occasional references to mineral deposits. But the final pages contained something different: a series of diagrams and calculations that made little sense to her. "Cole, look at this," she said, holding out the notebook. "Do you understand any of it?" He studied the pages, brow furrowed. "Some kind of measurements, and this symbol here," he pointed to a recurring mark. "I've seen it before in assayers' reports. It's used to denote gold." "Gold? I thought this was a silver mine." "It was." "But if your father found gold," Cole's eyes widened. "That would explain his secrecy. A gold strike would bring every prospector for hundreds of miles." Abigail turned to examine the rock wall at the end of the tunnel more carefully. "According to his letter, whatever he found is here somewhere." They spent the next hour meticulously examining every inch of the tunnel, tapping the walls, searching for any sign of what James Fletcher might have discovered. Their efforts yielded nothing but dust and frustration. "I don't understand," Abigail said, sinking onto the wooden crate. "He was so certain." Cole sat beside her, running a hand through his hair. "Your father was many things, but delusional wasn't one of them. If he said he found something valuable, I believe him." Abigail opened the notebook again, studying the final entries. "These last notes are dated just 3 days before he died. He writes about securing the find and hiding it from prying eyes." She looked up. "He hid it deliberately?" "But where?" Cole glanced around the small tunnel. "We've checked everywhere." Abigail's eyes fell on the photograph of herself, the one personal item among the tools of her father's trade. On impulse, she picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The back of the frame came loose, revealing a folded piece of paper tucked behind the photograph. With trembling fingers, Abigail unfolded it to find another map, more detailed than the one in the letter. "Look," she exclaimed, "it's not in this tunnel at all, it's—" She studied the map carefully. "It's above us, some kind of natural cavity in the rock, accessible from outside the mine." Cole examined the map. "I know this formation. It's just up the slope from here, a limestone outcropping that most folks ignore because it looks like just another part of the mountain." They hurried out of the mine, blinking in the bright afternoon sunlight. Cole led the way up a steep incline beside the mine entrance, scrambling over loose rocks until they reached a massive limestone formation protruding from the mountainside. According to the map, there should be an opening. "Here," Abigail said, pointing to a section of rock partially obscured by scrub brush. Cole pushed aside the vegetation to reveal a narrow crevice, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "This must be it." He lit the lantern again and went first, helping Abigail navigate the tight entrance. The crevice opened into a small natural chamber, the ceiling low enough that Cole had to stoop. In the center of the chamber stood a sturdy wooden chest, secured with a heavy padlock. "That's not a miner's box," Cole said, approaching it cautiously. "That's a banker's chest." Abigail knelt beside it, heart racing. "There's no key." Cole pulled out a small leather pouch from his vest pocket. "Your father gave me this before he died. Said it was for safekeeping, but never explained what it was for." Inside the pouch was a single brass key. Cole handed it to Abigail. "I think this belongs to you now." With shaking hands, she inserted the key into the padlock. It turned with a satisfying click and the lock fell open. Cole set the lantern nearby as Abigail slowly raised the lid of the chest. Inside, nestled on a bed of cloth, lay dozens of gold nuggets, some as large as walnuts, along with several leather pouches that clinked with the unmistakable sound of coins. But it was the document on top that caught Abigail's attention, a deed to a significant portion of land surrounding the mine, legally registered in her name. "He transferred the claim to you," Cole said, reading over her shoulder, "and amended it to include mineral rights for gold as well as silver." The date, it was just a week before he died. "But how?" Abigail asked, stunned by the revelation. "How did he find gold in an abandoned silver mine? The old-timers who worked these mountains often missed deposits," Cole explained. "They were focused on silver and didn't always recognize gold in its natural state. Your father was a scholar before he was a miner. He must have seen what others missed." Abigail picked up one of the nuggets, feeling its substantial weight in her palm. "There must be a fortune here." "Enough to secure your future, certainly." Cole's expression was unreadable. "What will you do with it?" The question hung in the air between them. Abigail looked from the gold to Cole's face, suddenly understanding the implications. With this wealth, she could return to Boston, live comfortably, never teach another day if she didn't wish to. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "It's overwhelming." Cole nodded. "We should secure this and head back. It'll be dark soon, and the trail is dangerous enough in daylight." They carefully repacked the chest, locking it securely. It was too heavy to carry down the mountain, so they concealed it again, planning to return with proper equipment. The ride back to Pine Valley was quiet, both lost in thought as they navigated the treacherous trail. The sun was setting by the time they reached the valley floor, painting the landscape in fiery hues of orange and gold. "I'll escort you to the boarding house," Cole said as they approached town. "Actually," Abigail replied, "I'd prefer to go to my father's cabin. I need time to think, and Mrs. Thompson means well, but she's rather inquisitive." Cole nodded in understanding. "The cabin's been empty since your father passed, but it's been maintained. I see to that." He led her to a small log cabin on the outskirts of town, set back from the road among a stand of pine trees. It was simple but well built, with a small porch and a stone chimney. "I'll get a fire started for you," Cole offered as he unlocked the door. "Nights get cold up here, even in summer." The interior was clean but sparse, a main room with a fireplace, table, and chairs, a small kitchen area, and a doorway leading to what Abigail presumed was a bedroom. Everything was exactly as her father must have left it, down to the books stacked neatly on a shelf and the writing desk in the corner, papers still arranged as if awaiting his return. Cole efficiently built a fire while Abigail explored, running her fingers over her father's possessions, trying to connect with the man who had lived here, a man who, she was discovering, was more complex than she had ever realized. "There's food in the root cellar," Cole said, straightening from the now crackling fire. "Nothing fresh, but plenty of preserves and dry goods. I can bring you supplies from town tomorrow." "Thank you." Abigail turned to face him. "For everything." "I don't know what I would have done without your help." Cole shifted uncomfortably, unused to gratitude. "Just keeping my promise to your father." "Is that the only reason?" The question surprised them both. Cole's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the mask of reserve he typically wore slipped, revealing something deeper, more vulnerable. "No," he admitted quietly, "not the only reason." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. Abigail took a step closer, drawn by a force she couldn't name. A sudden pounding on the door shattered the moment. Cole's hand immediately went to his gun as he moved to answer it, positioning himself between Abigail and potential danger. It was Danny, Cole's ranch hand, breathless and agitated. "Boss, thank God I found you. There's trouble. Harlan Miller and his men rode out to the ranch looking for you. When they couldn't find you, they started making threats, said something about settling old scores and Fletcher's gold." Cole's expression hardened. "How did they know about the gold?" Danny shook his head. "Don't know, boss, but they were armed and they weren't alone. Marshal Brady's trying to calm things down, but he sent me to find you." Cole turned to Abigail. "Stay here, lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marshal Brady." "Cole, wait," Abigail began, but he was already striding toward his horse. "I'll be back as soon as I can," he promised, swinging into the saddle. "Danny, stay with Miss Fletcher. Protect her with your life." Before she could protest further, Cole galloped away, Danny looking after him with obvious concern. "He'll be all right, miss," the young man said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "Cole Blackwood can handle himself in a fight." "That's what I'm afraid of," Abigail murmured. Inside the cabin, Abigail paced anxiously while Danny kept watch at the window. An hour passed, then two, with no word from Cole or the town. "Something's wrong," she finally said. "It shouldn't take this long." Danny nodded grimly. "I'm thinking the same, miss." "We need to go into town, find out what's happening." Cole said to stay put, "And I say we're going," Abigail interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "My father's gold is at the center of this. I won't hide while others fight my battles." Reluctantly, Danny agreed to escort her. They rode cautiously toward town, staying off the main road. As they approached, they heard raised voices and saw a crowd gathered in front of the saloon. In the center of the crowd stood Cole and Harlan Miller, facing each other like duelists. Marshal Brady stood between them, trying to maintain order, but the tension in the air was palpable. "This ain't about the past, Blackwood," Harlan was saying as Abigail and Danny approached. "It's about what's rightfully mine. Fletcher swindled us on that mining claim, and now his daughter's found gold that should belong to all the investors." "James Fletcher bought out your stake legally," Cole replied, his voice dangerously calm. "The claim is rightfully Abigail's now, the gold with it. Like hell it is." Harlan spat. "We all know Fletcher wasn't right in the head those last months, seeing gold where there wasn't any." "And now you're helping his daughter carry on the fraud," the crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement with Harlan. Abigail realized with a chill that many in town still harbored resentment toward her father. "There's no fraud, Mr. Miller," she said clearly, dismounting and stepping forward. The crowd parted, surprised by her arrival. "My father found gold, yes, but he didn't steal from anyone to do it." Harlan sneered. "The schoolmarm speaks. Tell me, miss, how much did Blackwood here promise you to stick to your daddy's story, or is he getting paid in other ways?" Cole lunged forward, only to be restrained by Marshal Brady. "That's enough, Harlan," the lawman warned. "One more word like that, and I'll throw you in jail myself." "It's all right, Marshal," Abigail said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Mr. Miller is entitled to his opinion, ill-informed though it may be." She addressed the crowd directly. "My father made mistakes when he first came to Pine Valley. He trusted the wrong people, made poor decisions out of desperation. But he spent his final years trying to make amends." She turned to Harlan. "The gold doesn't belong to me alone. My father left instructions." This was a lie, but a necessary one, she decided. "A portion is to establish a proper school for Pine Valley with a paid teacher and supplies for every child. Another portion will fund improvements to the town, a proper doctor's office, better roads." The crowd's mood began to shift, murmurs of approval replacing suspicion. "And yes, Mr. Miller, a portion is set aside to compensate the original investors in my father's first mining venture, including you and your late brother's family." Harlan's eyes narrowed, caught off guard by this unexpected offer. "Why should I believe you?" "Because unlike some, Miss Fletcher keeps her word," Cole interjected. "Just as her father did." Marshal Brady seized the opportunity to defuse the situation. "Seems to me there's a reasonable solution here. Miss Fletcher has made a generous offer. I suggest you take it, Harlan, before she reconsiders." For a tense moment, it seemed Harlan might refuse. Then, with a grudging nod, he stepped back. "I'll hold you to that promise, miss, every word of it." As the crowd dispersed, Abigail felt her knees weaken with relief. Cole was immediately at her side, steadying her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "That was quite a performance," he said quietly. "Your father would have been proud." "It wasn't entirely a performance," she replied. "I meant what I said about the school and the town improvements. Pine Valley deserves that much." Cole studied her face. "You're staying, then?" "I signed a contract to teach for a year," Abigail said. "I honor my commitments, Mr. Blackwood." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "And after that year," their eyes met, and Abigail felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening. "That depends on whether Pine Valley gives me reason to stay." The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. The school term began, with 23 students of varying ages and abilities eagerly, or in some cases, reluctantly, attending classes. Abigail found herself challenged and fulfilled by the work, quickly forming connections with the children and, through them, with the broader community. Cole arranged for the gold to be transported safely to the bank in Silverton, where it could be properly assessed and secured. As promised, Abigail established funds for the school, town improvements, and compensation for her father's former business partners, including a sullen but ultimately accepting Harlan Miller. She moved permanently into her father's cabin, gradually making it her own while preserving elements of his presence. Cole visited often, sometimes bringing supplies or offering help with repairs, other times simply coming to talk. Their friendship deepened with each visit, conversation flowing easily between them as they shared stories of their lives before Pine Valley. On a crisp October evening, as the aspens turned golden in the mountains, Cole invited Abigail to dinner at his ranch. She arrived to find the house transformed, the table set with fine china she hadn't known he possessed, candles casting a warm glow over the room. "What's the occasion?" she asked as he took her coat. "6 months since you arrived in Pine Valley," Cole replied. "Thought it deserved a celebration." They dined on venison Cole had hunted himself, with vegetables from his garden and fresh bread from the town bakery. The meal was delicious, the conversation engaging, but Abigail sensed an underlying tension in Cole, as if he were working himself up to something. After dinner, he suggested a walk outside. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the black velvet sky. They strolled to a small rise overlooking the ranch where Cole had placed a bench. "I come here to think," he explained as they sat, "to remember why I work so hard." "It's beautiful," Abigail said, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. "Peaceful?" Cole nodded, then fell silent for a long moment. Finally, he turned to face her. "Abigail, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have said months ago." Her heart quickened. "What is it?" "Your father didn't just ask me to look after you as a favor to an old friend." Cole's voice was low, intense. "He asked because he knew how I felt about you." Abigail stared at him, confused. "How you felt? But you'd never met me before I arrived in Pine Valley." "No, but I'd heard about you for years. Seen your photograph on your father's desk. Read the letters you sent him." Cole looked away, embarrassed by the admission. "James talked about you constantly, your intelligence, your kindness, your strength. I felt like I knew you long before you stepped off that stagecoach." "You formed an attachment to someone you'd never met?" Abigail asked, not unkindly. "It sounds foolish, I know." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "But when you finally arrived, when I actually met you, the reality was better than anything I'd imagined." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "At first, because you were grieving. Then because of the gold, I didn't want you to think I was interested in your newfound wealth." He met her eyes. "And honestly, because I was afraid. Afraid you'd return to Boston once your teaching contract ended. Afraid you'd find a simple rancher unworthy of a sophisticated woman like yourself." "Cole Blackwood afraid?" Abigail smiled gently. "I wouldn't have believed it." "Only of losing what matters most," he replied. Taking a deep breath, he reached for her hand. "I love you, Abigail Fletcher. I think I have since before we met, as impossible as that sounds. And if you could find it in your heart to consider a future here, with me." Abigail placed her fingers against his lips, stopping his words. "There's something you should know first," she said softly. Something I've never told anyone in Pine Valley. Cole waited, his eyes never leaving hers. In Boston, before my father left, there was a man, a colleague at the school where I taught. He professed to love me, and I believed him. Abigail's voice grew strained. I gave myself to him, believing we would marry. Instead, he took a position at another school and left without a word. She looked down, unable to meet Cole's gaze. I'm not pure, she admitted, the words barely audible. By the standards of society, I'm ruined. Cole gently lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. To her surprise, he was smiling, his eyes warm with understanding. But you're mine now, he said simply. If you'll have me, the past is the past, Abigail, it's the future I care about. Tears welled in her eyes. You don't mind what others would say if they knew. Let them talk, Cole said firmly. I love you for who you are, not for who you were or weren't before we met. Abigail felt as if a weight she'd carried for years had suddenly lifted. She leaned forward, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that conveyed everything words could not: gratitude, hope, and above all, love. When they finally parted, Cole rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? He asked, a smile in his voice. Yes, Abigail replied without hesitation. Yes to staying in Pine Valley, yes to a future together, yes to everything. They were married on a bright spring day the following May, in the small church where Abigail had occasionally played the piano for Sunday services. The entire town turned out for the celebration, even Harlan Miller, who had gradually softened his stance toward both Abigail and Cole as the promised compensation materialized and his daughter thrived under Abigail's tutelage. Abigail wore a gown of ivory silk ordered from Denver, with wildflowers in her hair instead of the traditional veil. Cole, uncomfortable in formal attire but determined to do justice to the occasion, wore a new suit that made him look more handsome than ever in Abigail's eyes. Marshall Brady, who had become a good friend to them both, gave the bride away. Mrs. Thompson wept openly throughout the ceremony, while Danny beamed with pride as he served as Cole's best man. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with music and dancing under the stars. As the festivities wound down, Cole led Abigail away from the crowd, toward the waiting buggy that would take them to their new home, a house they had built together on Cole's ranch, combining the best elements of both their dwellings. Happy, Mrs. Blackwood? Cole asked as he helped her into the buggy. Happier than I ever thought possible, Abigail replied, drawing him down for a kiss that earned them good-natured cheers from the remaining guests. They continued the school together, Cole helping to expand it as Pine Valley grew. Abigail taught for many years, eventually training others to take her place as age made the daily routine more challenging. The gold from her father's mine funded not only the promised improvements to Pine Valley, but also a legacy of education and opportunity that transformed the once rough mining town into a thriving community. 2 years after their wedding, Abigail gave birth to their first child, a son they named James after her father. A daughter, Clara, followed 3 years later. Both children grew up with their mother's intelligence and their father's strength of character, a living testament to the love that had brought Abigail and Cole together. On their 20th anniversary, Cole took Abigail back to the bench overlooking the ranch, now expanded and prosperous beyond what either could have imagined when they first met. Any regrets? He asked as they watched the sunset paint the valley in hues of gold and crimson. Abigail leaned her head against his shoulder, the silver now threading through her hair matching his own. Not one, she replied truthfully. Everything that happened, every joy, every sorrow led me here to you. How could I regret that? Cole wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close against the evening chill. When you stepped off that stagecoach all those years ago, I never imagined we'd build all this together. Nor did I, Abigail said, thinking of the frightened, grieving woman she had been, carrying secrets and shame along with her meager possessions. But you saw something in me worth believing in. I still do, Cole said softly. Every day. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they sat in companionable silence. Two people who had found in each other not just love, but acceptance, forgiveness, and the courage to build a life neither could have imagined alone. In the distance, their children's laughter echoed from the house, a reminder of the legacy they had created together, a legacy of love that had transformed not just their own lives, but an entire community built on the foundation of 5 simple words spoken from the heart. But you're mine now.